Yes, Chair, we live.
Okay, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Okay, at this moment, I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting in order. Today is February 23rd, 2022, and the time is 7:03. Okay, at this moment, if we can go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Vasquez, do you mind leading us on the pledge, please?
Sure, no problem. Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
Individual.
Justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. All right, at this moment, Planning Secretary, can you do roll call, please?
Yes. Madam Chair Valenzuela,
Present.
Vice Chair Mario Macio,
Present.
Commissioner Eric Peña,
Present.
Commissioner Jen Escobosa,
Present.
Commissioner Ricardo Vasquez.
Present.
Okay, perfect. Okay, at this moment, I'd like to open up public communications. Do we have any communications?
Madam Chair, we do not have any communications at this time.
Okay, perfect. So I'll go ahead and close out public communications at this time. Next, we'd like to move on to the consent calendar. Okay, first consent calendar, we have the action minutes from November 10th, 2021 meeting.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to pass the minutes.
And a second.
Second.
Ricardo, second.
Perfect. Thank you very much. At this moment, we'll go ahead and move on to the second item on the agenda.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. While we wait for the PowerPoint to come up, I'm just gonna mute myself real quick. Let's see here.
Ron and Madam Chairman, we need a vote on the consent calendar. So we had a
Oh,
motion
sorry.
and a second.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Sorry, but thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Madam Chair, Joanna Valenzuela,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mario Maciel,
Yes.
Commissioner Eric Peña,
Yes.
Commissioner Jen Escobosa,
Yes.
Commissioner Ricardo Vasquez.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Now we'll go ahead and move on to the second consent item.
And that's not that's not consent calendar. That's a public hearing. So yes, we'll move on to that.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So at this time, we'll go ahead and move forward with the public hearing for the second item.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, Planning Commission. We are at the final stages after about 2.5 years in the making and getting this downtown specific plan adopted. I'd like to introduce again the downtown specific plan team, Kaiser Ronwala, along with our traffic consultant, Tim Ernie from Kittleson, and also Suzanne Huerta from Rincon, who was responsible for a drafting of the environmental document. So I want to welcome them again, introduce you to the consultant team. Along with the consultant team, we have staff present, our associate planner, Melissa Chipris, and also our planning assistant, Marlene Vega. And last but not least, our public works director, Sam Gutierrez. All right, first slide. So to provide a little background on where we started and where we're heading, where we're at, so that way it helps us understand the history. So in 2016, the city approved the downtown transit oriented specific plan development, which essentially consisted of a traditional and form-based related standards. Traditional standards as in traditional zoning standards, for example, lot coverage, front, side, rear setbacks. And then in 2019, city staff determined from the time that the plan was adopted in 2016, in 2019, city staff determined that the existing max densities of 30 units per acre essentially meant that it hindered mixed-use development within the downtown specific plan, given the low density of 30 units per acre. So in 2020, the city was awarded a $310,000 SB2 planning grant from the State Department of Housing and Community Development. And with those funds, we utilized that grant to update the specific plan by increasing density and also implementing greater flexibility of development standards to incentivize housing production. So that just provides you a little context as to where we started with the inception of updating the downtown specific plan. Next slide. So the process. Again, we started in May of 2020, and just based on this calendar, it did get shifted a little bit once we got to the draft of the specific plan. And so during, at the beginning of May and June, January, we went through a discovery phase where we were able to engage stakeholders, the community, and really collaborate with the community in creating a vision for the downtown specific plan. So this just provides you context as far as the plan. Again, the original adoption date was August of 2021. And again, we'll go into detail on how we were able to address those changes based on city direction. Next slide. So we went through that visioning process, and the visioning process, including a charrette, which was done virtually for 3 days in the month of October of 2020. And so that consisted of noon talks during the day, and which included presentations on market assessment and development strategy, also elements of creating a successful downtown, and also looking at mobility trends and opportunities, and really focusing those on how they can be addressed in the downtown specific plan. And then there were evening presentations. And so that's where a lot of the collaborative phase took part, where we were able to present some of those ideas to the community and refine those, and then present those back to the stakeholders, the council, to further refine the vision and the plan for the downtown specific plan. Next slide. So this chart here just shows you, going back to, as I made the point earlier, on why the change and why the need for updating the downtown specific plan. And here it's showing what the existing downtown specific plan consisted of. And you can see there's a mix of uses, and it'll make a little more sense once we go to the next slide, showing the different zoning designations. So here you'll see in the adopted specific plan, you have mixed use zoning, and then you have multifamily residential zoning, which are two different types of development standards. And then you have a mix of densities. Again, you have mixed use densities, and then you have a residential garden, multifamily, medium density development standard of 20 units per acre. And then you have the varying heights, 50 feet in the mixed use zone, and then 27 feet in the multifamily residential section. So what we're doing here in the downtown specific plan, you can see we've essentially put together a standards where you set up a predictable development process, where you have a much smoother transition of building types and densities from the core, the corridor, and then from the edges of the downtown. And those zones consisted of the downtown core, the corridor, and the edge. And the units, the densities increased from the 30 units per acre to a maximum of 40 units per acre. And the heights for the core with the maximum of 50 feet, corridor 35 feet with the ability to go 50 feet. And then in the downtown edge, as you get closer to the residences, the height is less. So that ranges from 25 to 35 feet. Next slide. So again, here, as I was explaining, that you have different densities that existed within the downtown specific plan. You have industrial zoning designations, you have general commercial, you have garden multifamily. So you have for lack of a better term, a hodgepodge scenario of development types that existed within the downtown specific plan. And then you see you have your mixed use zoning designations as MU1. So again, these are the existing boundaries of the existing specific plan and their associated zoning designations. Next slide. So here is the proposed regulating plan for the downtown specific plan. You can see that there is some uniformity and transition between the core of the downtown as you look at the intersection of Main and Ramona, and then Baldwin Park Boulevard and Ramona to the west. And then on the east, you have the intersection of Ramona and Badillo. So you see the transition of your core, your corridor, and the edge as you transition to residential uses on the boundaries of the downtown specific plan. Next slide. So one of the key things in the downtown specific plan is really looking at the streetscape. As you can see, there's a photo here of the existing streetscape off of Ramona and what that consists of. Again, it's a 4-lane. It doesn't necessarily lend itself well to a pedestrian, walkable, pleasant experience. And you can see that it's essentially overtaken by the use of vehicle travel on Ramona. Since then, there's been improvements that have been completed on Ramona. Complete street programs where we're allowing for bike lanes, so which has improved other types of modes of transportation within the downtown. Next slide. And here's just a rendering, again, as we were going through the visioning charrette process. You can see what the downtown could look like and what that vision is for the downtown, and that perspective of what Ramona could look like, especially with the tree canopy. You see the different modes of mobility here, biking, walking, and it creates a pleasant experience for the pedestrian, not only for those that are using a vehicle. Next slide. This slide represents here one of the key things that the downtown specific plan does is it sets up a tree canopy for defining the street, and again it sets up that tree canopy to really define the different transitions in densities and building form throughout the downtown specific plan, and so that really guides the tree canopy throughout the downtown. And again, it creates a sense of place. It defines the street. It defines the public realm for those that are utilizing the downtown area. Next slide. This slide here, we collaborated with Parks and Rec. One of the key things, as we noted during the charrette process, and you guys all know, and unfortunately because of COVID, we haven't been able to take advantage of that annual street fair that happens in the summer. And I was quite taken aback when I first learned that it draws regionally up to 15,000 people in the summer. So we collaborated with Parks and Rec to understand the existing parade routes and incorporating that within the downtown specific plan, and really build off of the activities that take place in the summer and really incorporate other types of open space activities, and also street closures that happen during the summer events. And it allows for outdoor activities. Again, here in this slide, you see some of the examples of what can take place within the downtown as far as our outdoor activities, because there are some areas of the downtown that are in need of outdoor activity. And again, those include food trucks, incorporating food trucks, closing streets to allow for pedestrian activity, and farmers markets. And again, the lower picture here is a actual picture that was taking place at one of the summer events. So the downtown specific plan really builds on what is already existing, and strengthen that with other types of activities. Next slide. And I think, so this slide here, at this point, I'm going to transition, hand the baton over to our consultant, Kaiser Rongwala.
Thank you, Ron. Members of the commission and staff and community members. I remember, by the way, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I remember the very first meeting we had about 2 years ago, and we were interested in some of the observations, and we asked the planning commissioners as well as the city council about their understanding and their appreciation and their experiences in the downtown. And I think we got some comments. People noted that about 20, 30 years ago, as a kid, they used to walk to downtown from the adjacent neighborhoods for ice cream or for hanging out with friends. But you can go back even further. Your downtown is about 125 years or more old. And it really got a kickstart in 1907 when the Pacific Electric trolley line came in. And over the years was a flourishing place that was walkable, that provided a variety of mixed uses, and was primarily serviced by a trolley line. That trolley line was removed in 1950, and we all know post-suburban development following 1950s was largely suburban in pattern. You got development happening all over the city, including competing projects happening along the freeway and in adjacent cities, and downtown began to lose some of its charm over the few decades, and I think some of the things that were happening in the downtown were happening not just in your downtown, but all over the downtowns in Southern California, where people combined some of the tracks and created larger blocks to facilitate more parking because people were driving around to compete with essentially some of the suburban development that was happening, saying they got parking, we got parking as well. But that impacted the downtown's walkability and access. And what this plan hopes to achieve is restore to look at some of the assets. First of all, you have assets within your built community. You have assets that are natural, including people assets. Downtown has these wonderful assets. You have a station, you have arts center, the park, and all of the amenities that are in the park. So how can we recapture the glory from the past, the vibrancy that existed several decades ago, but suit it to our present need with a focus on the future to create a flourishing, inclusive, flexible, creative, and resilient downtown. So the plan that you're looking at is an illustrative plan, and in white are all of the buildings that are proposed. Now, as you look at this, you might think, well, that's a lot. It's almost the entire downtown. Yes, potentially leaving behind some of the historic fabric that you currently have in the downtown. But this is not a plan that we're suggesting will be realized in the threshold of this planning process, which is 15 to 20 years. It might be actually several decades before you realize a full built out. But what it does is it pulls together all of the economic development initiatives, the mobility improvements, the parking solutions, the arts and cultural happenings existing as well as proposed that Ron referenced, the historic preservation aspect, parks and open spaces that exist, plus the ones that are being proposed as part of new development, pulls all of those public realm improvements, whether it's to the streets or the parks and open spaces, and combines them and attracts and aims to attract and coordinate with private investment over a period of time. Next slide, please. So this is an aerial rendering to the bottom of the screen. On the left-hand side, you see the existing Morgan Park, and you're seeing the boulevard. And we anticipate that this boulevard, Ramona Boulevard, could be really a signature dynamite boulevard within the Southern California with its verdant canopy of trees and buildings that define the volume. Creating a signature address within Baldwin Park, but also within Southern California, one of a kind boulevard. And as Ron was suggesting, as you walk away from the corridor into the residential neighborhood, the buildings step back as it meets contextually to the existing fabric. And there's also attempts to connect the station to the Ramona Boulevard, but then also connect Ramona Boulevard to the parking asset that you have, the parking structure that you have in the back. And there's a paseo that is being proposed, a series of new proposed open spaces, both within the public realm and the private realm, seem to are positioned in such a way to weave together some of the assets that you have in the downtown, so they become accessible, they become walkable. Next slide. So that's the vision. How do you accomplish the vision? Well, here's the regulations. Here's the code. Here, the code is the primary tool, one of the primary tools that helps accomplish this objective. Now, the city relies on the private investment, private development, and majority of the sites that you see here, and the majority of the buildings that you saw in the earlier slides that were colored white are going to be built by the private development, by the private sector. So having a code that provides clear and precise standards and provides a streamlined review process of predictable outcomes is a key and a very important tool that puts your city, puts your downtown at a competitive advantage in attracting investment. And as again Ron was mentioning, the structure of the code is you have a downtown core that is your 100% intersection at Main and Ramona. That's where your intensity is the highest within the downtown area, and that's where we're proposing 4-story buildings, up to 4-story buildings. And then as you walk away from the core, the density goes down along the corridor itself, because you have a wide corridor. The frontage of that corridor can sustain taller buildings. So we're proposing there buildings that can go up to 3 stories with the possibility of a 4th story. And that's the sketch that you see on the lower right-hand corner, that you can have a 3-story building, and that 3-story building can have a 4th-story element, provided you take comparable mass away from the back. And that's important because as you have these buildings fronting this wide boulevard in the back, it meets an existing residential fabric in many cases. And we want to make sure that that's contextual to what's being proposed or what's already existing. And that is the downtown edge. So in the yellow ochre color that you see is the downtown edge, where 2-story buildings at 25 feet high would be allowed. Again, with the same concept that you can have a 3rd-story element on those buildings, provided you take a comparable mass of that 3rd-story element from the back of the building, where it meets, again, existing context of existing residential development. Next. The standards are, again, as I mentioned, clear and precise, but are also illustrated. People follow what people design, what they follow, and we want to make sure that the standards are clearly illustrated and clearly communicate what the standards are, and they're precise. So we spell out the standards, but then we also include sketches. So for in this case, the upper left diagram suggests where the building can be placed. It's not ambiguous like your current standards, where you have a minimum setback and the building can be placed anywhere once you meet the building minimum setback. It can be placed at 15 feet or 150 feet. In this case, there is a precise build to line. So the building have to line up so that you create that street frontage that we are interested in, that provides comfortable walking experience. The building heights are spelled out. The different frontages have different building heights. In this case, we're talking about the downtown core, where a 4-story building would be allowed, a 50-foot tall building mass with the ability to have a parapet or a sloping roof. The parking placement, the diagram on the upper right shows where the parking can be located, essentially behind the building. So the parking is not defining the street's frontage, but the building is. And then we're also calling out a variety of signs and a variety of frontages. Next. In addition to, as I mentioned earlier, besides the open spaces that will be provided for larger development in the public realm, we're also continuing that open space within the private realm. So for example, one of the least captured spaces in a lot of Southern California cities, and particularly Baldwin Park, downtown Baldwin Park, is the roof space. If you've ever been inside the parking garage on the 4th level and you look out, the views are just outstanding to the hills. And that's part of the open space. And as we come out of the COVID environment, having access to the roof, having access to a balcony or a patio for buildings is going to be incredibly important. So within the private realm, open spaces that will be required either on the lot or in the building are spelled out. In addition to that, we want to make sure the building masses are pedestrian-friendly, human-scaled environments. So the width of the building is called out, maximum widths. So the widths are not just based on block length. If you have a 400-foot block, you don't have a building that's 400 feet long. You have buildings that are smaller than 150 feet or 200 feet that allow for variation, but also are human scale. And then we also call out where the accesses are, what frontages will be provided. At the bottom, you see the access for the vehicular would be primarily in the back with access to pedestrians on the street's edge. So this is for the downtown. The next two images are going to show you similar diagrams that were created in the code for the downtown corridor building. Next. So this is again the downtown corridor, 3-story buildings with provision for a 4-story building mass along the corridor. Next slide. And this is the downtown edge. So the building masses, and as you can see between the one before and this one, you're getting buildings that are far smaller, that are far more residential in context, but at the same time, they're not all single-family residences. There are a variety of building types that are encouraged within the downtown edge that allow you to gracefully introduce intensity within the neighborhood in a very contextual manner. Next. Frontages are incredibly important, and if you've ever walked on Ramona Boulevard and you walk past a dead wall or a wall that has a niche that doesn't have a door on the south side, particularly on Ramona, you know what I mean. And it's not a very pleasant experience. We want to make sure that the frontages are provided, appropriate frontages are provided for appropriate buildings. So for example, if you have a residential building, you either want to step it back with a dooryard or a porch, or if it's a more urban building that's closer to the street, you want to lift up the first floor so that the rooms inside that building have privacy from the public street. But if you have a commercial building, you don't want any separation. You want the building close to the street and you want it flush with the sidewalk. So people are pulled in into the commercial establishments. And there's a transparency between the inside and the outside of the building, which promotes safety as well as visibility. Next. So this is what I was mentioning earlier. This is the classic error that most municipalities do when you're given a block and you have some metrics of what you can build. Let's say, for example, an FAR of 1, you just extrude that entire block as a building mass, right? So if it's a 450-foot block, your building is 450 feet wide. And then you come back and say, well, we need to break it. So you have some design guidelines and you try to break the facade and create all sorts of ups and downs and niches. But what it's not doing is what we are proposing in this code, which is next, is to break that box. So when you have a 450-foot long block, break it into its constituent parts so that you have an alley in the back. That alley provides access to the automobiles and service. And then once you have the alley, you design the buildings for the context. So if you are along a main street or a Ramona Boulevard, the buildings can be 3 or 4 story tall. But as you step back, your buildings are different. They are more residential, more house-like forms. And a variety of them. So as you're allowing density, intensity to be within the neighborhood in a very contextual manner. And then you have some standards that describe how the facade can be articulated. Again, the focus is on the public realm, on the design of the streets, on the frontages, not so much on the use. Now, I'm not going to talk about the uses in this presentation, but the uses are dealt with within the code, and they are intended to be flexible so that the market can dictate, because rather than having the land uses be very specific and you spell them out saying X, Y, and Z are allowed, well, X, Y, and Z is no longer in existence. We have A, B, and C uses in the future. So instead of actually defining each and every use and creating pages of uses, we have defined them broadly, and then given the planning commission and the community development director some discretion, so that the market can respond, and the building in the city in the downtown can respond and adjust to the market. Next, I think that's you, Ron.
There you go. Thank you, Kaiser. So the development potential, as Kaiser mentioned, I want to, as Kaiser mentioned earlier on, that this plan is originally, when you look at it, it's usually about a 15-year plan, but in reality, when you really look at the projection of this plan, as Kaiser mentioned, it's several decades. As you saw the build out aerial, the build out plan at its capacity. And so the development potential to understand based on the changes in intensity and also the increase in boundary based on in comparison to what the existing plan, what it currently consists of. That difference is of 7 acres increase from the existing 115 acres in the existing specific plan. And then for residential units, as approved, originally was 833 units. And with this plan, there's an increase of 912 units. For non-residential, again, based on the analysis on the building types and intensity based on the core, the corridor, and the edge, there is a decrease from 289, a little over 289,000 to 186, a little under 187,000. So which comes out to a decrease of 102,000. And this is important as we see the projection, the development projection, especially for residential units. As you've been a part of in this past year, as we've been going through the housing element update process, in planning the next 8 years as required by the state to plan for housing capacity, this downtown specific plan estimates, the downtown specific plan at an increase of 912 units assists in meeting the state regional housing needs assessment for the city of Baldwin Park, which is an approximately, again, as you've been a part of these meetings for the housing element, at a little over 2,000 units. So this plan essentially helps in meeting that goal. Next slide. There was an environmental review performed, an addendum was prepared, and based on the updates to the downtown specific plan, it was found that there would be no introduction of new significant environmental impacts beyond what was originally identified in the 2016 EIR, the Environmental Impact Report, that was prepared for the original transit-oriented development specific plan. Next slide. So funding toolbox. One of the really neat things about this downtown specific plan is, in working with the consultant, is including a funding toolbox. So it really puts city staff responsible for seeing not only the city staff, but the city as a whole, and guiding the city to keep with the vision of the downtown. And again, it identifies special districts for financial tools. It identifies grant, state and federal programs, and also public and private initiatives. And the way that it is outlined in the plan is by policies and actions. And one of the policies and actions that I want to identify is that the city select an urban design professional to assist city staff in helping meet the vision of the downtown architecturally. And as Kaiser mentioned, to make sure that we are getting that contextual architectural treatment and enhancing and activating the public realm. And it also lists a time frame. Kaiser's mentioned, we've mentioned this previously in our study sessions, where the policies and actions, are they ongoing, whether they're ongoing or long-term, but it helps identify who those responsible parties are, and it identifies whether it's a collaborative effort between city staff, the development community, and it specifically mentions the departments within city staff, for example, public works, community development, parks and recreation, and then it identifies a cost. And some of them don't require much. It just requires city initiative to begin that process of identifying the policies, the policy or action that doesn't require funding. And then lastly, the funding source, as I've mentioned, funding sources could be considered grants and also city general funds, and then also leveraging from the development community to be able to check that box in meeting the policies and actions of the plan. Next slide. So next steps. One really exciting event that's going to take place is we want to showcase we're going to have an opportunity to showcase the downtown specific plan on March 28th. Myself and community development staff member will be going to the annual Urban Land Institute Urban Marketplace event in downtown LA. And there we're going to be able to engage with the development community and really share with them this downtown specific plan with them to entice developers and let them know what Baldwin Park is doing, which is going to be exciting. And as I mentioned earlier, the next step is once we get this plan adopted, is to seek for an urban design firm. And again, that's to support the design review of projects to achieve the goals and the vision of the downtown. Next slide. So in summary, staff recommends, the Planning Commission recommend approval to the City Council to adopt the findings of fact and approve the multiple zoning and general plan use the changes to achieve the consistency, I can't speak tonight, of the downtown specific plan. That concludes staff's presentation. I would like to thank the Planning Commission for their efforts and their support throughout this process. As a stakeholder, as a community member, and also I want to give a big thanks to the consultant team for assisting us in this huge milestone as we get this plan adopted and look to the future and completing that vision for downtown Baldwin Park. So I want to thank Kaiser, I want to thank Suzanne from Rincon, and also Tim Ernie from Kittleson for assisting the city of Baldwin Park in this successful venture. Again, we are here to answer any questions regarding the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you very much. At this moment, I'd like to open up comments, concerns from the commission. Any questions?
Oh, Robert. Can't hear you, Robert.
Thank you. Madam Chair, did you want to
Yes.
open up the public hearing and allow the comments from the public, if any, before the commission starts its debate?
Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay. So let's go ahead and open up public communications to see what they have to say.
This would
Public
be,
hearing.
this would be the public hearing. We've already
Public hearing.
closed public communications.
That's right. Public hearing, Mike.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, so first I just we do have one caller that is asked to speak for this item. If you can just bear with me.
And Ron, is that in favor or against?
I think it's neutral. It's a comment regarding the downtown specific plan. It's just a general comment regarding the proposed plan.
Okay,
Let's see, here we go. Okay, so before we bring on the caller, as provided, as sent to you earlier this week, we did receive a letter of support from Jeremy Weber, an associate development manager for Evergreen. So we will include this in the public record. I will read from the letter from Jeremy Weber. As a California real estate development company with previous and hopefully future development projects in Baldwin Park, we support the downtown Baldwin Park specific plan. We applaud the plan's long-term vision of vibrant, prosperous, and accessible downtown, as well as the flexibility and opportunity it provides for new retail uses as drive-through establishments. We encourage the Planning Commission to approve the plan and look forward to partnering with the city on specific projects that help carry out the plan's vision. Okay. So let me call the speaker. Let me call Merrick Chang. Let's see here. Okay, we have Merrick Chang. You have 3 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you very much. My name is Merrick Chang. I live at 14755 Palmera Court in Baldwin Park. I'm calling today. First off, I want to give a big thank you to Ron Garcia, who actually really responded to my email. But I wanted to get back and talk today about the downtown expansion plan, but specifically one part of the plan. I live in the Palmera community, which is on the corner of Baldwin. I mean, Badillo and Ramona, and specifically the Pacific Electric building. As a resident, we've noticed that the lights have been out for quite some time, and that some of the windows have actually shattered. And I've actually called in about this before, but I never received a response from the city. Ron had already reached out to me, letting me know that the public works team is already on it. But this is kind of just a cautionary tale, I think, of if we're going to expand and put these new houses in the community, we should also seek to look into the projects that are currently existing and the buildings that we currently have, and make sure that we maintain those as well. I'm all for more housing in Baldwin Park, more affordable housing, but we want to make sure that we maintain and keep intact, and that we do our part or that the city does its part in making sure. Sorry, I'm a high school teacher. I'm a high school math program. I apologize, but we maintain and that we look into specifically the Pacific Electric Building and keeping it safe for our community members by keeping the lights on at night and also making the necessary repairs. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, Mr. Chang.
Yep.
You have a good night. Okay. Okay, Madam Chair, that is all that we have for public comment.
Okay.
For the public hearing?
For the public hearing.
Thank you. And so, Madam Chair, you can, at your discretion, you can close the public hearing and then go on with your discussion amongst your commissioners.
Okay, perfect. So at this moment, if there's no other public hearing, I'll go ahead and close it. And we'll go ahead and move forward with commission. Any comments, questions, concerns? Commissioners?
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So if I understand correctly, by Mr. Kaiser's comments earlier, when it comes to dividing out a property, let's just, for sake of argument, the section where we have, let's say, Superior, would that section be something that be considered one that could be cut into different sections?
Yes. Kaiser, do you want to take a stab?
I think your answer was concise and precise.
Okay.
Yes. So absolutely. So that's what, that is one parcel, also including the marketplace on the western edge, where the 99-cent store, that's another opportunity there too, where if development were to take place, is to essentially break that super block up.
And mainly the reason for me asking this is because when you're heading up north on Main Avenue per se, the front image of the side walls is not a front image. You're looking at pretty much the back of the walls or back of the buildings per se, because most of the stores are on the inner side of this complex. And I can see this particular development of us granting this becoming something a lot bigger, where we can actually see front side stores and developing so that we could see Main Avenues being one of our main boulevards where there's more front stores that can benefit from this particular development.
Yes, you hit it on the nail, Vice Chair. That's one of the key things about this plan, is that you're not turning the backs onto the street. You're providing that transparency to the street, and because right now, as you see it, you see parking, and then or you see buildings that have blank surfaces. They don't have windows. They don't have entryways.
Nothing.
So that plan, this plan reverses that, as you mentioned.
My next concern was Mr. Kaiser stated that we can put buildings up to 3-4 stories high, and you're saying for that we don't need no environmental impact reports?
Suzanne, did you want to?
Sure. Yeah, so there was an environmental impact report that was prepared in 2016. And so CEQA allows what's called an addendum. So we compared the two, the approved project from 2016 to this proposed specific plan. And we compared to see if there would be any additional impacts under this proposed specific plan. So we looked at, as part of aesthetics, we looked at and land use, we looked at the, we made that comparison, and we found that there's no additional impacts in above what was found in the 2016 report. So essentially that report does cover the impacts that were anticipated under this plan as well. Does that answer your question, or do you have any other?
Fair enough.
Okay.
So I have a question regarding the setbacks of the buildings when these projects do start coming into play. One of my biggest concerns during the last time when this was being presented and some other buildings have come into play, obviously our sidewalks, especially in some of the downtown area, they're very narrow, as it states in the reports. Is there room for setback? Are we going to widen those sidewalks? Is that going to be in play?
As part of the plan, in some areas of the downtown, it does require to look at the what we call the public realm, is to instead of continuing those narrow sidewalks, but actually widening them by as we mentioned earlier, by including a tree canopy, really activating the public realm. Yes, it does allow for opportunity to set back the building, to allow for example, like where you have offsets, not so much on a straight line, but it does allow some opportunity to set back the building. But the key is, again, those frontages that we went over, the variety of frontages, create and activate at the pedestrian level an interesting building facade and articulation at the pedestrian level. So it really does emphasize to incorporate that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Hi, so I have a question. Ron, so I know the caller that just called in, I think it was a little bit hard to hear because I'm sure it was on the telephone. But so I guess the issue was that there isn't enough lighting, at least within that area. And I guess sort of the concern is that as a result, that it wasn't safe because I think people were breaking glasses, or sorry, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Peña. So the comment, I apologize if it wasn't clear. The major concern there, we were not aware, and again, as mentioned, was able to communicate with our Public Works department. The city does own the former Pacific Electric building. Apparently, there's been some lights that were out that need to be replaced to improve the lighting for that building, and also there was broken, shattered window glass that hasn't been addressed. So that was the main concern there, and I think that it had related that based on that type of activity is why by introducing development within the downtown, that sort of activity would take place. But as mentioned, Commissioner, we're addressing the issue, and we're going to report back to the resident that lives at the Palmyra Court adjacent to the Pacific Electric building, so we can get some lighting back to where it was, so that way it's a little more safer for those that live in that community.
Of course. Yeah, thank you so much for clarifying that. So just to confirm, it's just the building that the city owns. It's not the rest of the areas. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I know that the caller had also obviously was advocating for obviously more housing within Baldwin Park, and as it relates just to this plan. So, you know, I guess my question is, can we anticipate sort of, I think we can see it maybe as a microcosm or maybe foreshadowing as to sort of the downtown area gets more developed. Can we just sort of anticipate, or at least ways to prevent issues like that maybe occurring once there's ample development and obviously housing, et cetera? I'm not talking specifically about just sort of breaking glass, but maybe I guess just ways to ensure that there's safeguards to ensure it feels safer or at least looks safer.
Yes, I mean, there's several ways that I think we can address that issue. One of them is, that there's sufficient lighting on buildings, so that way you're creating a safe area where you don't get dark areas based on the design of the building. The famous term is eyes on the street, and making sure that we can provide that type of environment. The other is, as the plan develops, as the city sees development within the downtown, there is a policy in action there to create a business improvement district. For example, like in Pasadena, your larger cities, Pasadena, Santa Monica, they've created BIDs, where even in downtown LA, if you've noticed, if you've been down there recently, all the activity that's taking place off of Broadway, where they have sort of semi police, but they're there riding bicycles, assisting anyone that's within the downtown. If there's any issues like that take place, that they can reach out to their local police department to address graffiti, address loitering, address in order to make sure that the amenities are kept up within the downtown. So that's a policy in action that's in there as we see further development in the downtown.
Great, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Got another question for you, Ron. Looking at the map, I'm just curious to know exactly how the border lines are drawn out on this particular map. And particularly if you look at Downing on the north side. I don't know if you could put up the map.
Yes, hold on one second. Let me just pull that up real quick. Hold on one second. David, can you pull up the PowerPoint, please?
Hang tight.
Thank you.
Number 14.
Yeah, 14. Actually, to get a little larger one, David, can you go to the first one? I think it's slide 7. There we go. Yeah, this one. Can you see the map?
Yeah, the map is up.
Okay, perfect.
So it does not, Downey is not noted on this particular map, but it's right above the railroad tracks, above Badillo, where Ramona is now. You see the dotted area.
Mm-hmm.
But the housing, the residential area that's not highlighted on Downing Avenue, I'm just curious to know why that particular section is not highlighted. If it's running all along Alderson. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, I see it. Okay. So here, what we wanted to do is just keep in line with what the existing boundary of the downtown specific plan. So we didn't really kind of want to blow out the boundary areas, but that's the reason why you're not seeing it.
But it looks like they were purposely excluded. Like, to me, that looks like they were purposely excluded instead of adding that particular section into it, into where we can actually develop housing in that particular area, if it's being considered, having higher density.
No, good question. So again, the logic there when we first were going through exploring the boundaries and looking at where development would occur. And again, in keeping in line, we wanted to keep in line with the boundaries of the existing downtown specific plan. And so we're not, this plan is not purposely excluding those parcels, but essentially it's just falling in line of how the original boundary line, the original boundary was set for what is considered the downtown area of Baldwin Park. I think as the plan evolves over the years, do I see the boundaries expanded? I see that potentially happening. But for this purpose, when we were doing the downtown specific plan, we really didn't want to, we wanted to keep in line with what the existing boundaries that were identified in the original downtown specific plan.
Okay.
So hopefully that answers your question.
Kind of. I didn't. Now, the other thing, back in 2016, I remember that the original plan had noted that along Ramona Boulevard, we would have an amplified sidewalk to where some of the stores would have the opportunity to have seating area for customers out in the front, sort of like a patio type of space. Is that still in the works?
Yes, and so yes, and a lot of the yes, absolutely. This plan promotes that type of activity for outdoor dining, outdoor activities, which consists of activating again that going back to that term, that public realm. So yes, this plan exactly does that. And again, just to use a recent example, not within the downtown specific plan, but if you've noticed that the bistro restaurant that just opened up across the street from City Hall, you've noticed that they've activated that public realm. And if you remember how that space wasn't being used prior to that restaurant coming in, they've been able to activate that area by outdoor seating, lighting, tables, and you can see how that spurs pedestrian activity. So to answer your question, yes, this plan does do that.
Okay, thank you, Ron.
Any other comments, questions, commissioners? Okay, I'll take it that we don't have any more questions or comments. At this moment, I'll close out the commentary from the commission, and we'll move forward with motioning to move this forward to the council. I'll go ahead and motion.
I'll second it.
Can I get a vote, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Madam Chair Joanna Valenzuela,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mario Maciel,
Yes.
Commissioner Eric Peña,
Yes.
Commissioner Ricardo Vasquez,
Yes.
Commissioner Jen Escobosa.
Yes.
The motion passes 5-0.
Perfect. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and have any staff report being presented.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, our next planning commission meeting, we will not be having one on March 9th, but our next tentatively scheduled planning commission meeting would be March 23rd. I'd also like to mention that the downtown specific plan is tentatively scheduled to go for final adoption before the city council on March 16th. Again, we want to thank the planning commission for all their support in seeing this plan through. And again, like to thank the consultant team in assisting the staff and the city achieve this big milestone and this new plan and this new vision for downtown Baldwin Park.
Perfect. Thank you. Okey-dokey. Any report of officers? No? Perfect. Okay, before we do close out, I do want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to all the staff and Ron and your entire team. You guys have worked really hard on doing this. You guys did a really good job at bringing a new and a revised plan to life, and it looks really great. So I'm really excited what are the next steps are for this. So thank you.
Thank you.
I like to piggyback on that too. You guys have done a phenomenal job. I know this has been in the works for a while already. And I can actually picture this in the future already. So it's a great plan to actually redevelop our downtown area so that we could get more or livelihood there, because it needs it. It needs it, and we deserve it.
Yes.
I think all our surrounding cities know that, hey, we're the middle of this. We're residents from around everywhere, West Covina, Covina, all travel through Baldwin Park due to the traffics that we have on our 10 freeways. And so this is key. This is key for us to liven up downtown area to where we can bring more revenue and
newer businesses.
New businesses. Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Okay. All righty. So at this moment, we'll go ahead and proceed with closing out the meeting for today.
A motion to adjourn.
Okay. Time is 8:14. Thank you, everybody. Good
Thank
night.
you, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.